In this episode, we are full on spoilers for both the novel and the film.
I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation. We're the YouTube show that reviews adaptations from one form to another. We have a returning guest tonight. This is our third person to return as a guest. We have Bill, also known as MattStaggerX on Twitter and YouTube. How you doing tonight, Bill?
I'm doing good. How's everybody doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you back. Thanks for coming back. This
Good
was
to
the
be
episode. This was the episode he was originally planned to be on, but we added him for last week. So, Max, what are we watching reviewing tonight?
Frank Herbert's Dune, originally aired a SciFi channel December 3rd, 2000. Written by John Harrison. Starring William Hurt, Cecilia Reeves, Alec Newman, Ian McNeice, Julia Cox, and a person's name I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Oh, I know I had it for you. Uwe Oxtendick. I think I gave you
Stilgar. Just call him Stilgar.
Perfect.
Is he though? Is he though? We'll get to that.
And
I
then
loved him in this show.
And then apparently it won Emmys for outstanding cinematography, outstanding visuals effects in a miniseries movie, and nominated for outstanding sound editing, which blew my mind.
Yeah, you got to think that the quality of visual effects and CG on television in the year 2000, which means it was made in the year 99 and 98.
On Sci-Fi's budget, because that's a big thing right there. On the Sci-Fi channel budget.
I believe, what's his name? Quinn's Ideas, when I was watching one of his videos a while back, said that it was made for like $20 million. You know, and it's still less of a budget when you get, account for inflation than what David Lynch had to spend. So, yes, they had better technology in some places, but I don't know. I don't think the CG is that bad for 2000. I think it was pretty good. Visually, the problem I had was the Harkonnen Guidey Prime. I could not look at all that red. I mean, just a couple shades of red and then red light shining in, and it's just like
the eye graphics got very distracting for us.
Oh, yes.
Great drinking game. Every time you see an issue with the eyes, take a shot.
Yes. I've got a screen cap that I'll be putting in the video of Cheney coming in, and Jessica's behind her. Cheney's got green glowing eyes because of the way the lighting worked, and she's got blue behind her. But what they did is they were wearing UV reactive contact lenses and had a UV light shining on them. And
so, get this.
I didn't like the eyes.
The final scene of the miniseries, Paul's ear is glowing.
Yeah, it's the UV light. You can see it on the side. It's reflecting off his skin in a major way. So
It was an interesting idea, worth giving a shot, maybe for a local production company, but it didn't work for the miniseries.
Yeah.
For me, it was the Sardaukar costuming. I cannot take you seriously if you look like a goth pastry chef. I just can't.
That hat.
That was so bad. I'm like, I don't understand.
So little.
The triangle kite behind him was like, what the hell?
Yeah, the white triangle with the red.
He's from Kyrien. He's from Kyrien. He's got his con behind him. That's what it was. It's actually inspired by Japanese costuming, medieval feudal Japanese. Most of the costuming in this show is based on real world costumes, with probably the exception of the headdress you'll see on the Bene Gesserit.
I'm not going to lie. I love this series. The story-wise, it is my favorite adaptation. I'm not going to judge the new one because it's not finished. But this is my favorite. I have the DVD, a double set DVD I bought from the Sci-Fi channel.
Do you have the original or the theatrical version?
Theatrical and original.
Not theatrical, director's edition.
I have the director's, which has more nudity. Is about the only huge difference.
What? 3 pairs of boobs? No, 5 pairs of boobs and 2 man asses. Yeah, you
just see more of it.
3 man asses. Okay.
Yeah.
Sci-Fi Channel did a lot of that in the early 2000s. You go look at some of the stuff they did with Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
You know, they had butts all over the place on Sci-Fi Channel. Just,
So, like,
it's-
something like this show really shows is how badly CGI just does not age well
Yeah.
compared to practical graphics.
Oh, absolutely.
unless your show is Battlestar Galactica, sometimes Firefly.
Well, I
Same
think
same visual effects house did both, but
for me, the thing that ties them all together is good story. If you can get the story right, I can overlook bad CG or outdated CG. I can let that go if you can compel me with the story. And the miniseries did that in a way that 1984 doesn't even come close.
right.
So,
So
I say, video game wise, if you ever played Final Fantasy VII, for instance, when that first came out, everybody's like, "This is the most realistic graphics ever," and you come back to it, it's like, "What was I smoking?" And
See,
it's kind of the
didn't
same
get
thing
it
with
from me.
Dune for me. I haven't watched this miniseries since it came out. Maybe a couple of
Yeah.
reruns back on Sci-Fi in the early 2000s, and it's been 20 years. And wow, it did not age like I thought it would age.
I've watched it 4 times now. Once when it aired, and 3 times this past week.
I watch
Yes,
it
that
about
took
once
lot
a
out of
year.
me. Okay. It took a lot out of me because it's not quite 6 hours. It's like 4 hours 39 minutes, but it feels like 6 hours because you're watching 2 or 3 videos that are also 2 hour long, and
Right.
you know they took 2 hours on TV. So do you want
Three.
to move on to our questions, Max?
Yep.
Alright.
What changes from the source material did you or did you not like?
I'll let Bill go.
I love the fact they focus more on Paul's prescience and how it's not always reliable. We got none of that, in the previous movie version of Dune. I mean, there was almost no prescience at all.
Yeah.
So, and I like that they leaned more into the relationship between him and Chani. I mean, you actually see it develop a little bit, which, I really enjoy because their relationship is one of the things that really made me enjoy the first book.
Right.
So I'm glad they got that. With the time they were allotted, I think they did a pretty good job adapting the source material. There wasn't a whole lot of changes that bothered me, to be honest. Like I said, other than some costuming issues that bugged me. Story-wise, I think they did a really good job.
Even the additions worked really well for me.
Yeah, and they made sense.
Yeah. I mean, they all felt like something
Mostly.
most felt like something that could have happened off screen in the book, and he just didn't tell us about it.
I don't like the branding of the Sardaukar on the back of their neck.
Yeah,
because it's a plot hole. If I mean, obviously,
Oh, are they a Sardaukar?
you know
Looks
it's
like a
there.
their neck.
Wouldn't you check everybody coming in for that brand?
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
you want
that
to
guy
get a
should have
job
been
with me?
nailed.
You want to get a job with me? Turn around. Show me your neck.
Exactly. That bugged me. Other than that, like I said, little things, nitpicky.
Speaking of neck, this is the most pedantic of complaints I'll ever give on this show.
Oh, that's
Gom Jabbar scene. Reverend Mother, when she puts the needle to his neck, says, "I have the Gom Jabbar to your throat." It's at the back of his neck. This is the throat. This is the neck. This is neck. This is neck, but only this is throat. And it was back here. I'm like, all right. It was just one word, just like, if I was the editor, I would have had big red lines through that.
Well, it could
Sorry.
have been metaphorical, like, them two are at each other's throats. You don't literally mean they're at each other's throats.
Maybe,
Just a
yeah,
situational thing.
but it's just, it felt wrong. I'm sorry to interrupt you on that. Did you
No,
have
you're
anything
fine.
else? Okay.
No.
One thing I was going to say, it's going to be almost impossible not to compare this to what we reviewed last week.
That's my thing is
So
you kind of hold it to that extremely low bad bar,
right,
and it
We're-
maybe makes it better than it is.
right.
Don't
We're
you
gonna try
miss
to-
Sting?
No,
I will
we're
kill
going to
you.
try.
No,
We're
I
going to
don't.
try to focus on changes in loyalty, to the book more than comparisons to the previous movie. But don't hold back on talking about the previous movie when you need to, because sometimes it will just have to come up. Max, what about you?
The first change that was like really apparent to me was the hunter seeker scene, and it didn't really mean anything. It was just like, what's going on here? Because I just finished the books and just finished the show. I'm like, that scene was off somehow, and it was a change that I can't say I disliked or liked. It's just like, why'd you do this?
Adding the way of the servant.
That, and it's like they almost seemed like they moved it, the scene where it took place. Like it almost like happened a lot later than it should have happened.
Yeah, it did. They did.
Like they stretched out the first half of the first third, I should say. They stretched that first third of the episode pretty far out.
Yeah. I think they did it to show Paul as more of a hero type, because having her there at the beginning when he sort of gives her that look when they first meet, and then she comes in, he's in bed. There's some light flirting sort of going on, and I think it just makes him look more heroic. So they were thinking, okay, yeah.
And like I said, it's one of those things like I can't really quantify. It's almost like I'm more disliking it that they moved the scene so late into the episode.
Yeah.
And then they stretched.
I agree.
Yeah.
The pacing on that particular scene would have been better serviced earlier, in my opinion.
And like that first of the 3 episodes, I think was like the worst of the 3.
Oh, agreed.
Even graphic wise, acting wise, everything was like, this was not a promo, a pilot episode.
It did have that feel.
And then afterwards, they're like, okay, we got a good budget. Let's do good.
Particularly the scene where Paul's talking to his mother and he throws his feet up. I have to eat duty for breakfast. And it's just so melodramatic.
That's one of the changes. One of the changes I've got here on my list that I didn't like was Paul's a freaking petulant little brat.
I didn't mind that part, but that's just me.
He's supposed to be 15. If he looked 15 and was small for his age, as he's described, I might be like, okay, yeah. I mean, if Denis Villeneuve had decided to write Paul like this with Timothée Chalamet, I don't think I'd have minded as much. But when the guy looks, what'd you say, 30? I mean, the guy's practically, he's only 24, but he looks like he's middle-aged.
It's the haircut, man. The haircut they use for young Paul, the way he looks like he's balding at supposed to be 17.
Well, what is it they say about teenagers? Like they all looked older 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go back to the 2000s, the teenagers all look like they're in their 40s.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know, but it's just one of those things that takes me out of it a little bit. Kind of pulls back the immersion.
Yeah,
especially the first, installment.
I didn't like how angsty he was. I'm surprised he wasn't walking around with dyed black hair and wearing just black clothes and black nail polish.
Oh man, the Sardaukar would have been mad. They're stealing his look,
Right. So, are there any changes from the source material in this that create any plot holes or issues?
I haven't
I thought you did.
My list of changes. Nope.
Oh, sorry, I thought you did.
It's all right. It's all right. Couple of smaller ones. They moved when in the story, the whole conversation about the hand washing and the water on the floor and the rags happened. And I actually think it works better the way they did it on here than in the book, because they take you outside and you see the poor people having to buy that soiled water, that just unhealthy water. That who knows what they had on their hands, and then it went on the floor, and then it went on a towel that's been used a million times before. So it's like, and it shows the people that are being demeaned with this ritual, and so this tradition, and I like showing it just to have, because it hit it this way, because it hit home more, I think, than the book did, and the movie left it out entirely. But I like how they, separated it from the dinner scene, because the dinner scene needed to be its own emotional storyline than what this was.
I would have liked the dinner scene more closely accurate to the book, where Paul actually, almost demands a duel for.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that part in the book. It always, I get a thrill out of it. So I would have liked to have seen
I would. One thing I would like to see at the dinner party is Liet Kynes pouring his water into a container when they had everybody dump their water out on the floor, and he's staring right at Lady Jessica when he does it with a smile on his face. It's like, what you gonna say? And I'm just like, all right, I like that. But that brings me to the other change, and because it's directly tied to the dinner party, is Irulan. Irulan's increased role in this story. It replaces what our experience of her in the first book, from the epigraphs. It takes those and it doesn't really translate them, but her presence in those is created as a presence in the story. It's the narrative itself, and I think it worked. It gave us eyeballs inside Gady Prime, where we're not going to be focusing on Harkonnen. It gave us eyeballs in Shadow's office, with what's going on with him. So, and I think she might have been the best acting in the entire movie or show, next to Saskia Reeves. It's hard for me to choose who I think was better between the two.
I gotta go, Jessica. I mean, she was outstanding.
She was, but Julie Cox as Irulan was just, I don't know, I was charmed. I was utterly charmed.
But that whole thing felt like a setup for the final line, about let's hope she enjoys her books, because it'll be they remember the concubine. It hit so much harder with her performance. So.
I in my notes, I wrote, I get the chills listening to that line, watching her standing there in shadow, as shadow, and that the light coming through the door, and she's just creating this long shadow, and it's just, I got the chills thinking about it. I think it's my favorite, 10 seconds in the entire
she takes that shawl, puts it over herself, and she's just there alone with the shadow.
She starts in that white dress, unless it's yellow. I couldn't tell, because sometimes it looked white, sometimes it looked yellow, and then the other half was black. I like how that reversed back and forth between the two colors.
Did you notice that when they first show Arrakis, the two closest planetary bodies are green and blue?
No, I didn't.
Which makes sense for the lighting, because throughout, depending which moon is in the sky, you'll either get the blue or the green at night.
Oh, the two moons? I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah. I've always loved that little detail. It doesn't really impact much, but I'm also thinking that's where the green eye comes in.
No, it was
depending
inside
if it was
the siege.
Nighttime and there's a window.
No, they were deep inside the siege. It was when Paul was laying there in his spice agony. So it was just the way that UV played out. And it was probably the other lighting on the set hitting her eyes at the same time the UV was, and they were hitting it. They just weren't working together. At first glance, you might not think much of this cute little scene with no dialogue. It's when they're playing with the marionettes. Yeah. And that too is pointing to power and control theme. I mean, literally, they're dancing on strings. And also, it teases the ecological and terraforming stuff. So that's another little scene that I really liked in the book, in the show. However, I do have some I do not like. First and foremost, I did not like the whitewashing of Yui or the Fremen. Yui is specifically described as having Asiatic eyes. I think the word they use is almond-shaped eyes, which is typically used in books to describe East Asian eyes. So that a little bit bothered me. But the Fremen, again, talked about this last week with David Lynch's Dune. The Fremen are supposed to be descendants of people that they're supposed to look like people in the Middle East and North Africa. They're Arab inspired. So much of their culture comes from of the Fremen comes from Arab culture or Islam or countries that are Islamic. They do keep more of it in this show than David Lynch did, though. Because you've got they call their trip riding the worm down to the south and back as the Hajra, and that's their word in the Dune Encyclopedia. That means journey of seeking. Yet in Arabic, Hajra is the name of Ishmael. The anglicized name is Hagar, but Hajra, then her name is the etymological origin of the word Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Journey of seeking, pilgrimage to Mecca. I mean, he's throwing it at you really, really hard. And Hajra is used in the book, so it's not something they did on the show. So, that continued whitewashing. And hint, next week, it's not going to be whitewashing, but it's going to be Arab erasure. Let me see, what was the other dislikes? I don't like that Duncan Idaho goes out like a chump. That was just a little ridiculous. I didn't like the shared family trait. That was just a little silly to me. That Paul and
I like that,
would
Frank.
both have. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't bother me.
See, I don't remember
especially when he
Jessica
does it
doing
earlier, and you don't know yet, and he does it earlier. You see him at one point thinking, and he's just doing that. And then first time watching, in the back of your mind, you're like, I've seen that before. Where did I see that?
But the idea that two people who've never been around each other would do that with would both do it with two fingers on the same temple for the same reasons. Just I don't know. It just didn't. I guess it's a family trait.
I think it's pointing to the blood hereditary, aspect.
There was another scene that I didn't like, and that was the waterfall. Right after Paul's major big speech. I mean, the speech was great. I think he was better at rousing the Fremen than Kyle MacLachlan was. Personally.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's even considering that I think Alec Newman's the worst acting in the show. But him standing there speaking to the Fremen, he was good. I didn't like the change of. It's not a big change. It's just a change that when Yui's stated motivation in the book of why he's doing it all that was to kill a man. I want to kill a man. Even Lynch got that right. I want to kill a man. But here, why? I had to save my wife. Okay, that's more sympathetic, but I like the idea of seeing this guy who's supposed to be a doctor wanting to kill someone. That tells you that plays into that hatred that he's supposed to have.
It's enough to override his imperial conditioning that he wants to kill him so bad.
I didn't like them killing off Feyd-Ruatha. I mean, sure, Feyd-Ruatha really isn't on screen in the books until like the end, but
I think that ending scene with him in the book is really important, though.
Yeah. So I was disappointed at that. I don't know what to think about the idea of Paul being able to share his visions with his mother by grabbing her hands and doing that. That just was like, what is this?
I'd say there was something similar in the book, but it was like not as.
There was.
Was there?
Yeah, he was able to, because she went through the whole point of I can't look there, because he was making her face his prescience. Yeah,
it's one of those weird things with like they can't mind read, they can't get into your brain, but they're empathic enough that they can sense what you're seeing. But it's weird.
Yeah, it has minutia that isn't exactly spelled out, so a lot of it is guesswork and sort of. I think it's this way.
So they're less Dana Troy, but sorta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not psychic. She's empathic. so she can't read your thoughts, but she can guess them or see based on
But you can read the smallest twitch of your left eye.
Now that brings me to the change that I dislike, that I actually think should have caused problems, and they just conveniently ignored them. And that was them skipping everything about Jessica and Paul from the time they get captured, and we say, Jessica wakes up and she's, tied up, and then in the book, and then that scene's gone. And then later we get her and Paul in the ornithopter being taken off to the desert. The show skips all of that.
Right.
It starts off with them laying there in the desert, no equipment, no still suits. They've been there for a bit. Why they're outside the ornithopter, I don't know. You're probably easier to stay up.
That's because they spent so much time at the dinner party.
Yeah. They needed seconds.
But and then they walk for who knows how long before the other ornithopter shows up. And I don't remember the exact minutes, but there's quite a bit of time spent in the desert, the open desert, with no still suit. While earlier in the episode, in the show, Leah Kine says, 2 hours out in the open desert without a still suit would kill you.
The deep desert. He says deep desert.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yes.
I
It's
thought
the
it
deep
was
desert,
open
not just
desert.
the desert. So
But then there's also the fact that I never once in the entire show watched anybody walk desert style.
agreed.
And that annoyed me because they were walking on sand for quite a ways and no worm came until their fall.
Until the drum sand.
Sand lane. Until their avalanche of sand, there was no worms, but they were walking for a while on that desert.
Clearly they never watched Tremors. I mean, that was been out for over a decade.
Stick to the rocks.
Yeah.
Stick to the rock.
Fred Ward could have told them better.
They basically had desert walking in that show.
Yeah, they did. Now that you mention it, I'm thinking back, oh my God, they did. I never thought of it that way.
Definitely inspired by Dune.
I think in like in the second one, I want to say they did something like that to try to like not get the worms after them when they had no rocks around.
But yeah, those are my dislikes and my likes, and the one that really kind of seems to cause trouble. All right, so we left off at question 3, with question 3 coming up next, right?
Well, it depends. Do you want to go over plot holes, or do you think we covered that pretty well?
I think we covered plot holes. Do you, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it was pretty much there's to be of fixed or speed up anything by the changes.
I mean, cutting out that whole sequence of Paul and Jessica's adventure and the ornithopter as prisoners and everything that happened between that, what we saw, I'd say it's probably half an hour, 20 minutes at least of showtime. Yeah. So that's one that I can think of that sped up, and don't know if I'd say it fixed a problem. There aren't really that many inherent problems when you look at it from the time it was written. With
right.
I'm just thinking, like, in the books, there was a lot of back and forth between Atreides and Hardikin. I think we kind of lost that for more of the Emperor side of things, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he kind of made it worth it.
Yeah. And it's like,
so good.
In the books, it was obvious that the Hardikins were like literally telling you what they're plotting to do to the Atreides.
Yeah.
And I feel like we kind of lost a little bit of that here. Where like they're literally telling you, we're going to do this. They're going to fight and do this fight, and they're going to kill each other and fight and argue against each other. We kind of lost a little bit of that, I thought.
I don't think so. I think we still got plenty of it, and maybe even after the fact a bit more with the Harkonnens plotting and intriguing.
Yeah.
Then it
was there, but I sped through it a little faster, I felt.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only thing they really nailed in that aspect was the attempted assassination. That was done well.
Yeah.
The whole
Feyd-Ruatha
Raban
type.
thing, their disdain for him as a thinker
I love it.
was quite good, but we didn't get a whole lot of Raban. So
Did we get a lot of Fenric? I barely remember him in the show.
a little bit.
Feyd-Ruatha?
No, Count Fenric, I think it is called.
Oh, Fenric. Casimir Fenric. Fenric.
Yeah, we got a little bit.
Yeah, we
He's
got
like-
a bit in the show. That actor has the creepiest freaking smile I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, he does. It is very
It's
off-putting.
just
Because he should have been in like the final scene too, right?
Yeah, in the
Or at
book,
least
he is.
mentioned.
Well, he was in the final scene.
Yeah.
But because I remember
Well-
thinking tonight, he was there when Feyd and Paul fought. I
Okay.
remember watching the Emperor look over towards him, and Hasselman just kind of like that, doesn't do anything. Because in the book, he's trying
he
to get
orders
Hasselman
them.
Fenric to
Mhm.
go over and kill, because Hasselman's
Yeah.
supposed to be deadly. That dude don't look deadly.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, he just
He's not supposed to. In the book, he doesn't look deadly
Okay.
either.
okay.
And it's like Fenric is a character like I didn't really get at the beginning of the book, but as it went along, it's like, oh, this guy's kind of sly.
Yeah, he is. He's very manipulative, and he comes off as a soft, almost lame sort of person, especially with
Yeah.
his speech impediment that he plays.
I will say that this is definitely a show that I would benefit if I watched with subtitles on. Because like
Yes,
I missed a
sure.
lot of random words or like names of people. Like, what was that guy's name? I have no idea.
Always watch with subtitles.
Yep.
Even if I'm watching something like The Wire or something that's just completely everyday, mundane names being used, I still want subtitles because then I catch details that
And see, I
might have.
I googled his name. Like, what was that guy's name? Because he's pretty important. And it's like, oh, that was him. I didn't remember his name being mentioned in the show, but they probably did.
They did mention it. Princess Erlon
Mhm.
asked him if it was his plan to send her there, and she mentions him by name in that scene when she's confronting her father.
And he plays a part in later books, and I'm assuming he's in Children of Dune. It's been so long, I don't remember.
Probably. I'm not sure if the same
I
actor
think-
or not, but maybe.
Yeah, I'm just. I really want to do Children of Dune sometime down the road after we've done Rings of Power, if we have time, if we have a week. The three of us too.
Oh, I'd
Right.
love to do it. Yeah,
If you're up to reading Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, Max,
yeah,
Dune Messiah is really short.
yeah. It is.
Potentially. Do we want to move to the next question?
Yes.
How well did the show adapt to scenery, costumes, and props?
Oh Jesus.
All right. All right. Let me start with scenery. Yeah, we're just looking at a bunch of matte paintings or projections on a blue, from off of a blue screen or green screen, whatever chroma key that they use. At the time, I remember thinking this looks freaking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, you look at it, you know it's a matte painting. Like I
Right.
know Bill's not sitting in front of a desert landscape right there. But it's still in the show looked good to me. My problems came on Katie Prime. The architecture, who was it said they always wondered about, always puzzled by, the architectural choices.
Fenring.
Harkonnen, Fenring. Yeah,
Yes.
I wonder about that too. Not just the architecture and the material choices for how your structure is built, but you have 2 or 3 different shades of red all over everything. It's some of the most hard to look at shades of red at that. And then on top of it, you're shining red light on shit everywhere. And that makes it even just more hard. That red was killing me. It was utterly killing me. The props look great, I think. I love the costuming 95% of the time.
So
Most of the costuming.
No.
Now they made a
Just
couple
no.
of choices when, like, the mob that comes in to kill Raban at the end. They should have been bloodied up. They shouldn't have been clean and pristine, unless everybody that had been fighting was dead, But I think they should have looked like they had just killed a whole bunch of Atreides or Harkonnen and Sardaukar.
Oh, shit.
The other
Just,
costumes,
Yeah. Sorry, just kind of
There
like
wasn't-
reminded me.
there was not a single costume that Julie Cox had to wear that was bad. The costume designer had a great time working with her, and she looked great in every dress that they designed for her. My favorite one, though, is that one at the end. You know, depending on which way she swings it, it's a different color and everything. The design of that was great. I'm not entirely happy with the still suits, although the coloration of them is a lot better than those. Oh, let's see, we can see that black speck from 10 miles away. You know, in
I like the fact
David
they
Lynch's
had-
Dune.
They had the headgear for them at least with the band going
That-
across. So that,
Yes, I love
you know,
that
because
too.
that's a function of the still suit
Yeah.
is, you know, these tabs that seal
And-
right up here.
And these lighter ones, not only do they help reflect heat, but it's easier to bury yourself and hide, camouflage yourself amongst rock and stone, you know, the sandstone and sand everywhere, you know. Whereas the ones David Lynch had them wearing, those stood out, you know.
Right.
So I like that. They didn't look too functional on the still suit side of things, except for maybe a hose attached here and a mouth mask or face mask.
I feel like I've seen that nose piece they have somewhere.
Yeah.
That whatever that device is, I've seen it somewhere.
It
And
was probably off the shelf.
Everywhere in the
Maybe-
last 2 years.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
maybe
it was. It was probably off the shelf, you know, with the budget they had. But I like most of these costumes, and I've seen videos where people are complaining and thinking they're just horrible and that the headdresses are terrible.
That's
and I'm
my
like,
thing.
yeah, the headdresses outside the Benny Gesserit. Give me a couple of weeks where I didn't have anything else to do and I could just dig and go through, you know, images of feudal societies and medieval societies around the world on Earth, and I could find you examples of almost every single headpiece that we saw on this show.
My problem is most of the headgear that they had for characters was non-functional. I mean,
It's not
you know,
function.
they have
It's not about
headgear
function.
coming out to here that's, you know, and I'm like, how do you even walk through a door when it has that plastic, you know?
so.
It's
you know, for
it's
me,
a sumptuary person. It's about your place and station in life that you're wearing this headset. That's why I don't know exactly what position Stilgar took, but that's why when they took over and they're sitting there with Paul on the throne, Stilgar suddenly had that headset, that headdress on.
But you know, for
Okay.
me, like the costuming, like the headsets look cheap.
Well,
Even the props, honestly, they look cheap. When we had a scene where like they're in a library and these books on the shelves, it looks like it's something out of a college play. It doesn't look like they're
Okay.
actual books on the shelf.
the entire
$20
spacing
million
field looked like they were wearing crushed velvet condoms, for God's sake.
I was
That bugged me.
I was laughing my ass off at their acting.
Yeah,
I don't know what's up with that, you know.
Meth.
I don't know if that was director choice or an actor's choice. It was interesting.
There was a guy at the inn scene. He had some kind of hat on and red hair just sticking out through the helmet.
Yeah, the bozo. The bozo.
Yeah.
That's what I call him. Every
And-
time we
I'll have to
watch
look
it,
for
my
him
wife's
again.
like, look, bozo.
And then, like, case in point, like extras and stuff, when we're watching the show, I'm like, these costume designers, like, what can I make this person wear? That's what I felt was their thing. Like, what can I possibly put them in next? You
Yeah,
have the
right
Emperor
next
go-
on.
The Emperor going from like Navy military gear to this weird ass thing with like,
Yeah, with the shoulder pads and the V.
and then his arm thing. I can't. The sleeves are like the same outfit
Well,
almost, but then they add these
me-
weird sleeves.
Didn't bother me at all because it's all
And, like-
most of it looked like stuff I would expect to see on
And
the
then-
cover of a science fiction novel.
Look at the guy in the bottom left picture on my screen. What the hell is he doing? Is he a T-Rex?
Right there.
What is that even?
I
That's
don't know. I
Stilgar.
can't make them out.
That's Stilgar wearing the headdress
Is
At the
that
end.
okay?
with the green.
What
Somebody-
even is that pose? I mean, sorry.
One thing that did bother me is that freaking wig that the unnamed Reverend Mother, because they never called her Gaius Helen Mullion.
Right.
Not that I caught. maybe in the director's cut they might say her name.
She does say her name when she's telling Paul about the meeting, but that's the only time her name is mentioned in the miniseries.
Okay.
At least that I remember.
But her hair, her wig, okay, I have no problem with the idea of her having long braids. You looked at all the other Bene Gesserit initiates; they all had braids coming from right here. So yeah, let her. But it looks like the hair designer, hairstylist, got lazy making the braids on that wig, and just said, "Let's twist it 3 times, twist it 3 times here, and there we go. It's just gonna hang like it looked." It looked really bad, that wig. I didn't mind the braids on the other Bene Gesserit, but
You didn't mind her Kentucky Derby hat that was like out to here?
not at all. Not at all. Like I said, that's the Bene Gesserit headwear are ones that I might not be able to find if I were to have time to do a search like that and just pour over images. But I'm pretty sure I could find something from history that has just about every other single headgear we see.
There's also a
including
reason we
whatever-
don't dress like that anymore.
Cultures change in that position, things change.
When we're talking about sceneries, props, etc., I already told you my thought about the clothing and stuff and the props. Scenery kind of ties in with CGI and stuff. There's a scene in the last episode where you have a bunch of people charging towards the building.
Mhm.
And it's clearly CGI and little claymation figures running towards the thing. And then they switch cameras to looking at their faces coming in, and it looks like it's maybe a helicopter view of them zoomed in on it, like it's actual footage, not CGI. And it's like the same number of people, but they decided to CGI their backs and film their fronts. And then they all rush up some stairs and like half the people.
Right. I know the scene you're talking about.
And mind you, the back to front, it's like the front view is so far away and blurred out, it's hard to tell if that was CGI or just a blurry camera effect.
Right.
Because there are some aspects of it like CGI, but there was like could be something they're doing there. But it just, I feel like some of the stuff they could have done more practical effects on it, do a lot better long term.
I think a lot of that was budget constraints,
Mhm.
because I noticed they reused 3 or 4 shots from that battle throughout the entire series.
There's
for
a scene
different
with
things. So
there's a scene with Paul's sister, and there's a little mouse, and
yes,
it was a freaking claymation style, and like what?
That was
Why?
CG.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
claymation
yeah,
style
it
CG.
was- yeah.
We see that mouse twice. We see them do that with a mouse. See them do a Muad'Dib twice.
But just the CGI style is like went from the worms doing their thing to like this claymation CGI style.
You know
It
what
really
Denis
stuck
Villeneuve
out.
did? He had an animal wrangler bring an actual desert mouse or a kangaroo mouse to the location they were filming and put it on some rocks in the desert and filmed it moving around in the rocks and desert, and then had the wrangler take it back away. I wonder how much that cost. Probably a tenth of what the CG cost.
Depends.
Yeah.
Because remember,
No idea
CG
what
wasn't
Wranglers-
cheap back in 2000 either.
Wranglers are not that. Oh, CG was expensive.
If it cost you 20,000 to do a scene back then, even
That's
20
why-
seconds.
That's why the difference between what came out in 2000 on Sci-Fi Channel and what came out in '99 from George Lucas's ILM are so strikingly different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, CG was at like, oh my god, that's amazing levels in 2000.
Oh yeah,
Just not at television prices, and even television prices cost a lot. That's why this cost $20 million. I think it was at the time the most expensive miniseries ever on television, and the first miniseries that Sci-Fi Channel ever did.
and it's crazy to think that 15 years later, how far it's gone. Like even 2 years
Yeah.
after this, CG exploded and kept exploding.
I keep
Every year it
pointing
just-
out.
yeah.
4 years later, 3 years really, because I think the miniseries came out in 2003, but the Battlestar Galactica CG is only 3-4 years after this on television, on Sci-Fi Channel. Yet it holds up to just about anything coming out in the theaters today. And how he did that, I don't know. And I believe he's one of the crew members that has passed away since that. So
Does Matt have anything else for this topic?
Bill,
Yeah.
I mean Bill.
Is there any scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, or hated?
Ah, yes. Go ahead, you guys.
For me, I have basically the one. It's the same in the book, where Murder Snuggles Jr. just stabs the Hartican with a needle.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's good.
One of my favorites, and one that stuck with me, I think, is when Jessica's talking to Aaliyah and so upset she's crying, and the tear falls on her, and she takes it off, and, basically licks the moisture.
Yeah.
That always stuck with me. You have the sort of torture that Jessica's going through, realizing, what her children are going through. You can see that agonizing thing as a parent, but you can also see the sort of water discipline that's been instilled. So it does show that sort of.
Where's the best place to store your water?
juxtaposition.
Inside your body.
Yeah.
I'm gonna remember that next time I'm out someplace and it's a really hot day and I got beverages to drink. Better to drink it and put it in your belly than leave it in your bottle.
Did they have that same sentence in the new one? I don't think they did.
I don't know.
I don't think he told her to keep it in your body.
It might be. Well, he hasn't been in the desert. He hasn't been trained on the desert ways yet. They're just getting past killing Jamis and heading out towards Siege Tabar.
Didn't that happen before they got taken by the Freeman?
They just met the Fremen.
Yeah.
No, that's what you're talking about there. The best place to store it. I think that was a Fremen telling him that.
I thought he said that before. I thought he said that before they met up with the Freeman, because it was before she got trapped in the sand.
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and listen to it. It's been a few weeks.
Because remember how she fell down the thing and into the sand? And they dig her out?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember him saying that then.
I'm gonna have to rewatch.
Well, book-wise versus the show.
Well,
I want to say in the book he said that before he met up with the Freeman, because at that time he's having dreams about them. So he knew things about Freeman ways that he shouldn't have known.
I believe Kynes says something in the book about it first.
I'm opening I'm opening the ebook right now.
But were there any other scenes while we're waiting on Glenn to research?
Oh, a bunch. That ending scene with Irulan was that's powerful. That's beautiful. Honestly, another one is when Chani and Paul are talking, and he's upset that he can't see, and that his mother almost, got killed, and he curls up in her lap. And I love that because, like I said, their relationship is one of the things that really drew me into the story. So I really love that sort of a tender moment between them and him being vulnerable. At that moment, he's not the Messiah. He's not the Muad'Dib. He's just a guy who's under a tremendous stress. And she's just the woman who loves him, trying to give him comfort. I love that.
Okay, Max is correct. Drink all your water, Paul said. Axiom, the best place to conserve your water is in your body. Keeps your energy up, you're stronger, trust your still suit. And this is right after they had been chased by a worm, barely dodged the worm. As I scrolled back a couple pages and there was a worm being chased.
Okay.
We're talking about scenes. I'm just going to reiterate what I said earlier, and I'm going to read the dialogue, because this is the closing line of the miniseries. You see her standing there, so haughty, so confident. Let us hope she finds solace in her writing and her books. She'll have little else. She may have my son's name, but it is we who carry the name concubine that history will call wives. And I'm just like,
yeah, that's powerful.
It is interesting how many random lines of dialogue are from the book right in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other times there's stuff that's not even close to the book, but then you have these random verbatim.
I got a kick out of a number of little times that you find them doing stuff exactly to be different than David Lynch. David Lynch, Reverend Mother puts the gum jabbar to Paul's neck with their index finger. This one, Reverend Mother does it with her middle finger.
Right.
It's on the middle finger. I'm like, well, that was a choice. There was a whole others I had written down, but I lost that note file. But I'd written down a bunch of little things that were like, it seemed like determined to go different than what David Lynch did, just because it was David Lynch, even if that's how the book kind of described it. But
I think running away from Dune 1984 in the other direction is a good thing for anyone.
yes, most of the time, yes, for most things. I really loved nearly every bit of the dinner party, even when technically away from the table. You know, the whole thing up on the balcony or whatever that was. Mezzanine, is that the word? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Great scene in the book, and one of the better scenes I think in this whole miniseries. Inarulin just made it that much better, and I just wish they'd given her some sort of witty, dialogue at the dinner table itself. They could have created something to fit into there to give her some fun at the table, because I don't think she said a single word at the table, at least not in the televised edition. There's one thing that I don't know if I don't dislike, but it's just like, what? Why does he keep saying that? Paul says this phrase 3 times in one instance. He says it to Gurney 3 times when they first meet back up. They're reunited after being separated, and they're hugging each other, and Gurney's going, young pup, young pup, young pup. And every time he says young pup, Paul goes Gurney man. He calls him Gurney man again, and then he calls him Gurney man again. All in the course is like 10 seconds. That's it. Paul's calling Gurney man all throughout this book, and it sounds so weird. It kept distracting me. And it's not that I dislike it, it distracted. I'm like, he did it again. And I'm just like, what is with this?
Pet names for each other, pretty much.
Yeah, I accept that. I mean, everybody's got a nickname, or as I give everybody, Cogniment, Mr. Twisted Mentat. And what are you going to be, Max?
I already forgot.
It'll be right here on your screen as people are looking at us talk about it. I'll figure out. Human Gum Jabbar. That's Max. That's because, he is sinister to death. Yeah, so those are my scenes. I didn't really have a scene that I didn't like the waterfall. I said that, but that's not really so much a scene as a moment in the scene. So
The speech I enjoyed. The waterfall thing just confused the hell out of me.
It harkens back to
the waterfall.
Movie.
The waterfall things, like in the book, if they did that, it would make sense. But I don't think we really got as much of the water being as big of a resource in this as they made it in the book. If that makes sense. Like they talk about it, but they don't make it this as huge as in the book.
Right.
It's like Randolph Ford making it rain over Arakeen after he defeats Feyd-Ruatha and Emperor Shaddan.
Which I hate with a passion.
Yeah.
All right. If we're done with those, we can move on.
Yep.
Hopefully this will be pretty fast.
Yeah,
best or worst actor? Or best casting, worst casting?
First, I want to say I really liked Uwe Oskanek as Stilgar, but I don't think that was Stilgar. It didn't feel like what Stilgar feels to me like in the book. But I really liked the character we saw. I enjoyed that. And also, not like how the book has him, but performing with what they were given. I like that Matt Kieslar guy who played Feyd-Ruatha. Now, they're not my likes. They're just because they're not really playing the character that's in the book, so I'm not counting them. best actors. Saskia Reeves as Jessica, Ian McNeice as Vladimir Harkonnen, and Julie Cox as Princess Arulan. I think she stole every scene she was in.
Yeah, for me it'd be Jessica and Ian McNeice as Baron, because the Baron was so slimy and came off as intelligent, but at the same time.
There were a couple times he was a little over the top, and then he broke the fourth wall, and I think that was all in the director's head, though. So
that just sounds like Ian McNeice for you.
Ian, yeah.
Anybody who can be evil and rhyme and iambic pentameter at the same time, I'm okay with it.
I don't know about the iambic pentameter part. I didn't notice that, but I was rather annoyed with the ending of his scenes in couplet rhymes.
I know.
Hey,
for me, I like
3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
but it's only when he's monologuing about their big plan. So I kind of like it. It sort of adds a signature. I'm a wrestling fan, so I sort of get this kind of doing a promo vibe from it that I really enjoy. It's fun.
For me, God damn, anything even triggering here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
My screen's not flashing that I'm talking.
Oh.
For me, I liked Laura Burton as Aaliyah. As a child actress, she didn't do bad.
No,
No,
not
she
at
was
all.
good.
Apparently, she has no other roles ever. She only did Dune.
Wow.
And for what she probably had to work with, I think she did decent. I've seen a lot worse child actors out there.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's definitely an improvement from the David Lynch Dune.
Mhm.
Gave her more character and, let her be the child just with adult dialogue, which is the way it's supposed to be.
Didn't mind Ian McNeice as the Baron. I think he did a decent job. Look-wise, I like the new Baron more than this guy.
Oh, me too.
James Watson, I'm not sure if I liked him as Duncan Idaho.
No.
It feels like I barely even saw him in the show. He didn't feel like this badass.
Right.
Dunk was on screen for what, 2 minutes?
And I want to say we missed out his drunken scene, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yes,
it
we
wasn't
did.
in there.
Yeah. But they mentioned getting drunk on the beer several times.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like maybe there's a cut scene. I don't know. I haven't seen the director's cut.
No, not in there.
Can't even pronounce this guy's name. Laszlo Ikish. I think he did a decent job as Robin.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you said Laszlo, I was like, that's Raban.
Yeah, he definitely came off as a aggressive
Sleazy.
meathead, which
Sleazy,
is what
greasy.
you want him to be. Yeah.
Just all around like
he threw down his dagger when
Yeah,
he
that was
realized he was surrounded by the crowd and was going to get killed. I would think Raban would want to kill as many of them as he could on his way out.
I literally said that watching. Like, I feel like he would have been like, come. And just
if I'm going, I'm taking some of you with me.
Yeah,
that feels exactly what he would do. But I'm kind of surprised on that.
He was also wearing some metal armor. I'm not sure how they managed to stab him through.
Yeah. Well, they cut his head off.
Unless it was only this right here that was covered with
it was
covered with armor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that pretty much covers. Oh,
your dislikes,
PH
or your
likes and dislikes. That PH Moriarty for Gurney Halleck. Like he was
him, but
acting wise, it was okay. Casting look wise, like I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, that's not Gurney in my head.
His action was just like old man Shatner with 2 knives in slow motion, and everybody else is going full speed. But he's just kicking ass, and it's like that makes no sense. That guard might. Sorry, I was gonna say that guard. The only thing I disliked about him is he looked too much like Robin.
He did. I thought the same thing.
I had a gripe though. He's supposed to be this great soldier. He should know better than to put a blood-covered dagger in its sheath. because he pulled that dagger out of its sheath and it was already covered in blood. You wipe it before you put it in the sheath, and you just basically ruined your sheath, and you're going to ruin your blade.
Unless you have the Freeman knives. The I can't think what they call them offhand.
Yeah, that wasn't a Chris knife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chris knife.
That wasn't.
That's
Was
the
not
only
a
exception.
Shy Halud.
So my worst would have to be Alec Newman as Paul Muad'Dib Atreides,
Yes.
Miroslav Taborski as Count Fenring, and Jacob Schwartz as Othane. He just 3 times this week I watched it. I'm just like, did this guy ever study acting? You know, did he just go into this off the street? You know, what's that's just
Othane
how it
didn't
seemed to
bother
me.
me.
He was one of the ones that bothered me. I didn't put down P.H. Moriarty because he was annoying, but it didn't bother me to a real, serious level. At least not the level that these 3 did. Or maybe I'm wrong with Miroslav Taborski because I just found. I think maybe it's the character that I'm reacting to. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's meant to be off-putting, so, I mean, and he pulls that off amazingly. So either he's that way in real life, or he did a really good job of pulling off that off-putting nature.
Yep. So, how well did the show handle themes and ideas from the book and its own themes?
You guys first.
If you don't mind.
I'd have to say, overall, I was pretty happy with handling the themes, except didn't quite go into the religious aspect. Paul's struggle with, becoming this religious figure who's going to cause this jihad to occur across the universe. I mean, didn't really touch too much into that in this miniseries. So I would have liked to have seen him at least touch on that. Other than that, I think it did, as far as the planet and
The ecology.
I thought they did a decent job of that. I love the fact that Paul's first one-on-one conversation with Kynes is Kynes talking about how they need a new condenser for the planets. And his first one-on-one talk with Cheney, she says the exact same thing. So it kind of lines up with their both planet focus. I love that little detail. So
Like father, like daughter.
Yeah, overall, I think they handled most of the themes well. Like I said, I would have liked to have seen more on his fear of becoming this religious figure.
I could see that. I remember there were a couple scenes in his what do you call it? The visions he sees.
Right.
Like almost like they're almost gonna touch upon that, but then they just shifted to something else.
Yeah, he's standing there. There's bodies everywhere. His hands are covered in blood, and he's staring at them in horror, but they never talk about it.
Well, there's also his face, and they're chanting Muad'Dib, Muad'Dib, and like that. That's where that sounded like the religious side of the jihad, but they never quite went there.
Yeah, at least in this.
Yep.
So
I thought it kind of. I mean, it didn't heavily touch. It touched on it more heavily than I think that Lynch did. The whole religious,
it's a pretty low
aspect.
bar. So
Right, granted, but it was there, just not. I didn't list it. It's not one of the themes so much that I have, that I put down on my list from the book. But yeah, I do see it now that you've mentioned it. I'll probably talk about it, look for it in the next Dune.
Right.
For next week. But yeah, it was there. It's just not much. I mean, they at least did give nod to the Missionara Protectiva, if not name dropping them. They referred to Ramallo as one of our missionaries, which that's a change in the book, actually. I do believe because the Fremen have their own Reverend Mothers who do their agony in a totally different, take a totally different truth sayer drug than what
she
Gesserit.
She made a mention to I just forgot her name, Jessica, about using the religious prophecies or something.
Yes.
Yeah,
like she made
you've used our customs and beliefs well.
Yeah.
Is
Mhm.
what she says to her.
And like that's
Which makes it weird if she's a missionary. She's really taking them upon herself. She's referring them to as our.
I was gonna say, it alludes to the book where like being Gesserit have been doing a lot of stuff behind the background for centuries here.
Yeah.
Right, laying the
see,
groundwork.
That really makes. Yeah, Paul has some amazing abilities. Paul can do some amazing things, even in the book. Is Paul really the one? Or is it just a really cynical grab at the superstition to use that to make himself seem like the one? I don't know if there really is an I mean, because he does have abilities, but is the one, is the Mahdi or the Lisan al-Gaib, and
Well,
I got to point out something. Assumption one, the Fremen are the inspiration for the Aiel. Will we accept that assumption?
Yes, absolutely.
Assumption two, the Tuatha'an are related to the Aiel much in the same way Vulcans and Romulans are related.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it any surprise both Tuatha'an and Fremen have a title for someone called Mahdi, which is seeker? Let me get the exact meanings here. I think I wrote them down. No, I didn't write them down. I just have to mention this.
In Dune, the Mahdi is
I think it means seeker.
it's a voice from the outer world.
That's the Lisan al-Gaib, is the
Right.
voice of the outer world.
Right.
Mahdi, I believe, is seeker. And if the guy in the chair is on it, he's looking it up
Nope.
right now. No,
Now I'm gonna try to spell that.
Mahdi. Thought you were watching with
Mahdi.
subtitle, bro.
No.
And you read it in real
No,
time.
I'm not doing it.
Mahdi is what Rain is. Kylo's husband.
Yeah.
He's the Mahdi, and he's they're told, Perrin and Egwene are told him it translates as seeker of something or something seeker. And I even think there's an Aiel warrior society, the Water Seekers.
Water
I
Seekers.
believe
Yeah.
Mahdi is in their name as well. Tell me Robert Jordan didn't read Dune
Oh, of course he did.
many times.
Well,
I know.
Well,
It's pretty
considering
great.
the word Mahdi is from Islamic Masonic deliverer of says fill earth with justice, equality, true religion, blah blah blah.
Okay.
His whole thing was religion and reading all these backgrounds. So it's like, yeah, maybe, yes, probably,
Yeah.
definitely read it, but also his whole history strict is like he definitely knows about the Islamic side of the word.
Yeah.
I believe Jordan admitted to
pervasive.
both. In several interviews, he's mentioned,
I'm not sure.
that he
Yeah.
was a fan of Dune and the Fremen.
Yeah, I don't hold
Specifically,
it
so-
against him. I'm not.
Oh, I don't
judging.
either.
I'm actually. I love it. I love the fact that the Bene Gesserit are kind of like the Aes Sedai, or the Aes Sedai are kind of like the Bene Gesserit. Paul and Rand are pretty much the same. The Fremen and the Aiel, Mahdi and Mahdi. There really isn't a Navigators Guild or Mentats equivalents, so that goes out the window. But
Yeah. Well, going back to your whole thing about whether he's the true Kiswatch Hardock, whatever pronounce it, I can't, whatever.
Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah. Whether he's the true one or not, like that's literally a theme of the novels as you go on.
Right.
yeah.
And
How far have
it's
you read the
always
books?
honestly, it's kind of like Dragon Ball Z. Every season, there's a new level of, I forgot what it's called.
Super Saiyan.
Super Saiyan. There's always a new level above it.
Yeah. How far in the books have you read, Max?
Probably up to the first two from his son.
Okay.
So I've
Okay,
done
so you've gotten past
Heretics.
Chapter House.
Yep.
And Heretics and Chapter House. Okay.
So I've read all of Frank's stuff. I think I read some of his son's stuff. I read a couple of the way prequels with House Atreides and House Hardican in the robot era.
Yeah. The Butlerian Jihad era. Yeah.
Yeah. And where
Well,
you
she-
find
you
out
say
the
that because it's
Harlequins weren't
serious.
always necessarily the bad guy.
No.
Yeah, and Baron was kind of a muscly hot dude at one point, which is just weird.
Let's go back
Um,
to themes.
Did Matt have any other themes?
No, I think we covered them.
You know, for me, it was like, you know, Glenn mentioned it way earlier. Resource scarcity obviously is through the
That's-
book and the show. I don't feel like the show really handled the whole water scarcity as well as the book did. Like they talked about it here and there, but they didn't really bring it into focus of how scarce water is.
We even
Right.
So
see
when you
Johnny crying.
It
Johnny
didn't have
crying
yeah,
tears.
it didn't have as much of impact, in my opinion, in the show versus the book.
Right.
Like when you see the underwater catch, you know, the catch of water, it's like that's huge in the book. It's like, wow, they're mother load. In the show, it's like, oh yeah, it's water.
And then he went to a vision.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't happy seeing her cry. I understand why she cried, but Fremen crying tears.
I was okay with it because she was over the reservoir. So if she was going to
Right.
do it, she's adding to the water.
Yep.
So
Okay.
in my mind, I made that connection and went, okay,
That,
I can accept.
that works. That works.
You know, another theme in
Comrade
the
Stagger.
book is the whole I had the word earlier. It's like plot within a plot within a plot with the Baron. He's always going
I
about
think
how he has a feint and a feint and a feint and a feint and a feint.
Right.
And I don't really know that they really handled that as possibly well in the show.
No.
Like there were aspects of it again, like with the water thing, like it was there, but it was kind of on the background and in the subtext. They talk about here and there. You have the needle in the guy's leg as a feint within a feint.
Right.
You have the final fight with the needle. But politically, I didn't really get that sense of feints within feints going on.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think with Feyd, they sort of missed an opportunity to show a little bit of his cunning in the book when he fights the prisoner with the poison dagger.
Yeah.
And the way he manipulates the crowd. I mean, it's not really him, we know, but
And the way he
It-
even thinks he tricked Gurney. Or not Gurney.
So was there
Clifford.
even a crowd in the show?
no,
Yeah,
no.
not that
Just-
we could see. When they
Just
had the
some
shot
gym
later,
bros. Just some gym
when you had
bros
the
cheering him
shot
on.
And you saw the fireworks, you could see there was a crowd in the amphitheater, the arena they were at. When
To
they
me, it
showed
just
the-
looked like
there
he was in a gym with his bros.
Well, they're different shots. I mean, the
Yeah.
one where he's actually fighting, he is just fighting, and Erlon's up on the mezzanine watching. And
Yeah.
there's no crowd. They're not in a
Well, we don't
coliseum
even
at that
see
point.
we don't even see his birthday fight. We only
Right.
see him fight twice. We see him fight a slave as a practice,
Right.
and that's that's the guy he clocked with the stick and it
Mhm.
sounded like he hit metal. Which, like every other hit, sounded like wood on flesh. All of a sudden, it sounds like metal, but I don't know the sound edit on that.
He was a robot in disguise. Come on.
Must have been.
He's go gadget.
Uh, But yeah, and then we see the fight with him and Paul, which I love the fight between him and Paul. I enjoyed that.
The only other theme I can really think about would have to do with his visions, his whatever you want to call that past, present, future, all entwined state. Like I think they tried capturing it as best they could at the time.
Right.
And
I
I'd say
think
they
they
handled
did.
it decently well for the time.
Even
Yeah.
Jessica's, when she did her spice agony, I'm telling you, when she did her spice agony, from the moment Paul says mother, and then it goes to a shot of her, until it's a shot of her, you can see what she's looking at. I've had trips that made me look exactly like that. I'll just every expression she made, I'm like, I've been there. Yeah, I know that one. I know all that. Yep.
But
I
did she
just-
have to
every time
hold
I
on to
watch
the
that, it
earth?
makes me laugh.
Did she have to hold on to the earth to not fly away?
Yes,
Keep
because
from
that's
falling off.
centripetal force. Centripetal force. Yeah, that was. They did a good job of keeping the psychedelic aspect of the book Dune in place with the way they did their visions. I'm fine with not actually seeing the stuff that Paul sees, like the jihad pouring across the galaxy. So I liked what they did with all of it. It was pretty cool on that. You got any more, Max?
That would be it.
Well, the first key theme from the book for me that really, it's one that should be addressed, and it wasn't. That's what makes a person human. I don't even know if the Reverend Mother said the Gam Jabbar test, the box of pain, is to test whether you're human or not.
I don't think she
don't
did.
think so. So if they'd even done that much, I would have given them the check mark for addressing that theme from the book, even if in the smallest. But they never did.
I could have swore she mentioned something
Right,
about
in this one.
to see if you're human, but it was.
Because he always
I'll
follows
have to
back.
go
He
back
follows
and check
back.
that.
Are you suggesting that the Duke's son is not human? And her
Right, so
line is, "I'm suggesting you might be human."
Right.
You
So-
know, but that's not in this one. That I recalled it, and I just watched it in the last 3 or 4 days. I watched it. 3 days I watched it twice. I took a day off. But this past week I've watched it 3 times. So I'm pretty positive on that. There's a chance I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
All I'm imagining right now is Glenn sleeping and the Baron just floating.
Exactly.
Now I'm not going to be able to sleep.
Rhyming over your sleeping body.
And that's
No,
why I'm the
thank you.
human Gan Jabbar. You're welcome.
Yes. The next theme from the book, they did get a check mark on, because colonialism and oppression. You can't get away from it. It's there every bit of the story. That's one
Hey.
that's
It's even in the
They can't-
casting.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like they're all European. How? Made sure they were in Czechoslovakia and they didn't want to import a bunch of people from elsewhere. They imported enough people into Czechoslovakia, but because it was Czechoslovakia at the time. The ecological impact of human beings. Pretty sure we can see that. They're wanting to build. They've got the water, and as Lee told us, said a number of times, and that includes terraforming is the next one that I put there. Even that puppet show, they were talking about terraforming and ecological impact on the planet when
Yes,
they busted out with those trees, those
Yeah. The
leaves.
puppet came down and the branches came out.
Yep. And then there's the whole, as I wrote it, power and control structures, whether through political, social, economic, or religious control, and how all those interact. See also question authority. That was there, definitely there, in all kinds of places. Paul was playing with it. Duke Leto was playing with it. Baron Harkonnen, the Emperor, and even Irulan was used,
Right.
playing with those. It's all over the place. Duty, yeah, I would say duty is there, not as strongly as it could have been.
It's for breakfast, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Paul bitching about it, but Gurney Halleck, will you enlist with me? Boy, I never left your service.
Right.
He was still holding to his duty. Even if he wasn't well elected, I still kind of like this Gurney Halleck. We got more of him, I think, than we got of Patrick Stewart's Gurney Halleck, which is just disappointing. Looking forward to see what they do with Josh Brolin.
That should be fun.
Yes.
Well, at least he
Max's
can fight.
favorite.
Yeah,
Max's
that's it.
favorite. He brought this up nearly every episode of The Expanse. Resource, scarcity with oil. I mean, spice. It's definitely scarce. And water is definitely scarce.
He made a call out to that one guy at the dinner party, being a water hauler.
Yeah.
Quite like that.
Then there's the thematic question: is seeing and knowing the future a good thing? Paul never really talked about anything along those lines. I mean, he talked about seeing it, but never gave any hint if it was a problem or not. And I could see it going both ways. I mean, yeah, obviously we can all see the benefits of knowing, seeing the future. But when you sit back and think about it, you can find a lot of negatives.
Well, that's one of the things I like about the new version of Dune, Villeneuve's version, is it shows you how problematic it is when you don't know exactly what you're seeing is accurate, true, or just a possibility. So he's already touched on that in that first movie that makes you go, oh, okay. So you can't literally trust your own vision of the future. It may not mean what you think it means.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Definitely hit on selective breeding, or as I like to call it, eugenics. I made that bad joke last week, but in their case, it's really not too different. Because
well, it kind of is when their test is, "I'll kill you if you fail it. If you pull your hand out of this box."
But it's very, very few men went through that test. Not none, like they say in Lynch's movie, but very, very few, according to the book. And I mean, yeah, doing that to the Bene Gesserit women, but they've been trained their whole life to be prepared. Maybe not knowing about that test, but to have all the skills and knowledge to keep yourself alive when you have that test.
I was saying, think about the Asade test.
Yeah.
Or the accepted.
I'd rather stick my hand in,
walk through these arches.
How actually oddly easy some of those tests seem to have been. I don't know which test I would go through. I don't like being burned, so as a former cook, I've been burned enough times to really not want it again. And love is definitely, the theme of love is definitely seen there with, the Atreides, all, the whole family loving each other. Paul loving and being loved by Chani or Chani. How do you guys say it? Max, what do you say?
I think just Chani.
Right, so it's Chani now. See, Max said Chani, so I was going to say I have to say Chani from now on. But, so
Glenn's the kind of guy that says GIF.
It's supposed to be GIF, but I do say GIF. Depending on who I'm talking to.
Yeah, well then you should have used a J. I hate that.
I brought up how, I brought up the puppets, the marionettes, and I brought up the water squeezings from the towels earlier, so I don't need to do that. Right. So I got everything that I had listed here under themes.
Okay.
Which just leaves a couple of quick questions. Well, one more discussion question and 3 little easy questions. You do have the number 7 there. How well did the writers?
Yep. How well did the writers production handle? Sorry, I just cannot read today.
Writers and production. Sorry.
Okay, it's just typed weird. Okay, how well did the writers and production handle the characters? Did they seem to understand the characters? And if I were to go, I'd just say they definitely mishandled Duncan and losing his name already. The old guy.
Gurney?
Yeah, Gurney. Mishandled that.
Paul. They miscast Paul totally.
Yeah, I can agree that I think Paul was absolutely miscast.
So he was in Children of Dune, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he went on to do Children of Dune.
I want to say he did great for that.
I liked him much better in Children of Dune. I will say that.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
So it's like,
but McAvoy blew him away.
Well, I mean, it's McAvoy.
Yeah. I'd say I'd agree with that Gurney was mishandled casting wise. Paul was mishandled casting wise. I don't know. They just didn't do enough with Casimir Fenring for me to really think they got him right.
Yeah.
But the worst, in as much as there's the Feyd-Ruatha, just doesn't feel like Feyd-Ruatha from the books. But I still love the performance and love what they did with the character. It just wasn't Feyd-Ruatha Harkonnen. And again, the same thing with Stilgar. Louis Oskdenek, however I pronounce it. Sorry, I'm butchering the German. But what he was performing, he was playing, he did great. I really liked him. I would have followed him, you know? I would have had no problem him being the leader of my tribe. As long as it wasn't a warrior tribe. Because he just doesn't, he seems more like the guy who's head of the dart league or the pool league, or maybe even the bowling league, than of a Fremen tribe.
I do have one more, and that's the Navigators Guild. Those guys at the end of the blue. I think Lynch
crushed like condoms.
I think Lynch wrote those guys or something, because
felt that way.
I don't know what they're smoking, what mushrooms are on. That was so weird.
Everything about them was over the top and not in a good way.
That head guy from the guild, he reminds me of a skinny fish. He's like an eel or something.
He acts so weird. If they didn't show the navigator bat thing, I would 100% think that's what a navigator looks like. That's why you never see him.
Now, see, if the guild guy that was at the dinner party had similar weird motions and movements, then I would assume it would be something cultural from the world that they grew up on, where most of the men go to be guildsmen. You know, it's like, I haven't read it, but I've heard a lot about it. Daniel Abraham, who's half of James S.A. Corey for The Expanse, he's got a fantasy series called The Long Price Quartet. In one of the cultures, from what I understand, motions and poses, like body poses and that they take, are part of their communication, their language. And it's like deeply part of their culture. And you learn it in the books reading it, as I've heard in many reviews. So, I mean, but they did it. They just had the guy who was at the dinner table be kind of slimy, just a little bit slimy, but not like.
Yeah. When you mentioned the body language thing, I'm reminded of this video of this politician who has all these hand motions that just do not have nothing to do with what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what was up with that. But I didn't really have any other real negatives. I mean, the weird thing is the two that I had the most opposition to the way they handled it, because it wasn't like the book, are two of the performances I enjoyed, So
does Matt have a couple?
The Fremen, I think they actually did a decent job with the actual culture, maybe not with the casting, as we said, but with the culture, I think they did a better job. I know in the director's cut, the Spice Agony scene is much more orgy-like and wild, and turns into this crazy sort of mad party that much more relates to the book.
Scene.
But that is very much a part of the culture. They, I think they handled the culture overall pretty well.
Yeah, I have to agree. I didn't bring up the Fremen because I don't want people to say Glenn's beating a dead horse, talking about the Fremen being white people again. But yeah, culturally, I think they showed some good Fremen culture. Although they didn't show them be able to seal the caves that they go into to live, but they show really lax water security inside those caves. And I'm like, if those are still open to the outside, you're losing lots of water.
Did they really show the the hive mentality they got while being on the spice thing in the show?
I didn't get the impression of a hive mentality in the book.
I don't know what the best way to describe it, but there's this what was it, Jessica or Chani or somebody makes a mention of like they brought her something before she even knew she wanted it. Like they have this communal empathic ability.
Yeah, they didn't
I don't
really
know
touch
about
on
that.
it.
No, I'd have to reread that section.
But there's like
But
definitely something there that's like that's one of what makes them such fierce warriors. Like they can literally almost communicate with each other at a distance without verbal talk.
Right.
See, when that scene was happening in this show, I kind of had a flashback to The Witcher when Geralt and Yennefer meet. You know, the whole ragamuffin scene. You've
Right.
seen The Witcher, haven't you, Bill?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that it just group orgy, characters standing there that aren't having sex, watching a group orgy. Yeah, kind of reminds me of the two.
Some
Not
people
exactly.
like to watch. I don't kink shit.
Do you want to go to the ratings?
Yes. Let's do those real quick.
Okay.
How close was the adaptation to the source material? How would you grade it on a 1 to 10?
I'm leaning towards an 8.
Okay.
For what we had that was in it was like some things verbatim. Other parts, no idea what you're talking about or doing. So I put it around 7, 8-ish, probably 8.
Okay, I'll put you on for an 8.
I'd go for 8.5 probably.
And I was going to go 8.1 just to go a little higher than that. So, how much did you enjoy the show as if you had never read the book? Or
So-
when you had read the book, whichever
I can
may be
answer
the
that
case.
because when this first came out in 2000, my mind was blown. I put like a 12 when the
Wow.
show came out in 2000.
Yeah, I would have said like a 9 when I saw it.
Yeah, my wife put it at a 9. So,
Yeah,
and she has never read the books. It's hard for me to do that because I read the books at such a young age that and
same
kept
here.
going back to it. So it's really hard for me to go, how would I react to this if I hadn't read the books? It's just become such a staple for me. So,
I
but
think
my
I
wife
read the
loved it.
I think I read the books in 2003, the first one at least.
I finished the book a couple of weeks before the film released. Lynch's movie came out. Because I
I'm
remember I
sorry.
was in a scramble to finish it before the movie came out, so I could see the movie.
How angry were you?
I don't really remember. I think I enjoyed it actually. I remember watching it on TV and loving it, except I think the one I watched on TV and loved is the extended edition, which I gotta watch at some point here. Just to compare. But yeah, I go that high. Everybody answered that one? As I've never read the book. So how much have you enjoyed the show, taking into account all of the changes and your feelings of the book? I'm going to have to go first here. I'm going to give it an 8. Just an even 8. You know, it was pretty solid and all that. There were strange things that I didn't like about it. I'd love it if they could remaster this and maybe color correct some of that red so it's not as hard to look at. Fix up the digital matte paintings that they have. That shouldn't be too hard, you know. If they could do it with Star Trek, you know, the original series, they can do it with this. And I think it would sell a lot of DVDs or Blu-rays and digital downloads, I should say. And that would be good for you because your DVD would become a collector's item.
I'd have to give it a solid 9. I mean, I went out of my way to buy it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for me,
I'm not
like I
surprised.
said, I watch it at least once a year usually. I'll get in a
Okay.
mood for it and I'll pop it in and just binge. So
How often do you
I
watch
do enjoy it.
Lynch? How often do you watch the Lynch? Ever?
I don't.
Unless you have to.
Last time I watched it was right before we did the show last
Recorded.
week, and I made myself do it.
Yeah,
I
The
still have
theatrical-
to-
that.
I still have to do that just to reference. For me, I'm having a hard time between like 7.5 and 8.5
Okay.
because like
That's right.
the CGI stuff is whatever, but like the blue eye thing really became hard to not notice once you noticed it flicker
Can't
from like
unsee it. Yeah.
it becomes very distracting throughout the whole movie or episodes. Like all of a sudden they turn their head and the eyes change color again, and it's just hard to not notice it. The costuming becomes to a point where it becomes a joke at the end. We're just laughing at like, what the hell is that outfit?
Yeah, I agree.
And so it's like that's where I struggle between 8.5 and 7.5, because it's like 7.5 because it's like where it's not quite don't like stuff, but then 8.5 I get the joy of mocking it.
Do a shot every time somebody's wearing a stupid hat.
I do the blue eye thing, you'll be dead by the first half hour in.
Oh
basically.
yeah, alcohol poisoning.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'll just say 8. Average between the two.
8? Okay. Yeah, that's how you guys have made me feel. I don't even know if that'll show. I'll have to make sure to move any icon I have in that corner. So, are we done? Did we kick out all the questions? And it took us that long. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Bill, for coming back 2 weeks in a row. Hope to have you back next week. We'll talk about that. Awesome. Thank you, Max, for joining. Everybody at home, thanks for watching. Please leave us a like, a subscribe, and leave some comments. Let's hear what you thought about this Dune and the other version of Dune. Thanks for stopping by, and don't forget to be awesome.